All right, good afternoon. You guys hanging in there? Almost there, almost there. Vegas is a crazy city. You pack in 80,000 cloud gurus, it gets even crazier. It's kind of wild. Well, thank you for joining us. I know you got a lot of demand on your calendar. There's a lot of options. So I appreciate you spending the next hour or so with us. My name is Todd Carey, and I run the AWS integrated practice for DXC. So I run solution engineers, our sales, our offering, delivery. In short, I get to be a part of every investment that DXC is making in AWS. And so I'll take you through a little bit of our perspective on the cloud marketplace. We'll go through a little bit about our methodologies, and then we'll dive into our customer success story with Claro Communications. A year ago, we had just announced at reInvent a strategic agreement, a partnership with AWS, really leaning in and pivoting DXC. And we were just getting the machine started, just getting people in place, starting to figure this whole thing out. And since then, we've gone on a digital transformation of our own, huge cultural shift. So you can imagine the amount of work it takes to move a company like DXC towards a digital path. Absolute huge challenge. But we've learned a lot. We've learned a ton in the past year. We've learned how to dive deep into our customer relationships. It's not just a cultural shift, but it's a perspective and a strategy change. So we work now from the outcome back, free of technology, through systems, really diving deep and understanding what our customers want to accomplish. We've also learned to think big. It's amazing when you take the constraints of legacy and technology out of the conversation, the options, the creativity, things that really are presented for the benefit of the customer. And so when we approach a digital market, the whole point is to help our customers navigate through a pretty disrupted market. And one of the main disruptions that we've seen, even as a larger GSI, have been the born in the cloud, the smaller boutique type firms that bounce around inside these large companies. And the agility and the speed is amazing. I mean, I'm quite envious. They can have a conversation on Monday, a bid on Tuesday, and by Thursday, they're already spun up and live, and you're running POCs. Very tough for a company like DXC, and we're not alone. Obviously, our larger competitors feel the same way, but very difficult to compete with that. But now the conversation has changed a little bit inside these large companies because we're looking at how do we take the lessons learned from all of those POCs and all of those small application efforts and extrapolate that across the enterprise. I mean, for me, cloud is actually fairly simple. I think there's two main factors. It's skills and scale. In skills, we've proven out. And companies like DXC, we've learned the game now. And in fact, that's one of the main reasons why the AWS practice, which I own, was created inside of DXC. So we could keep up, but we also have the scale piece of it. And see, when you look at the skills required to innovate, to work on applications in a lab, maybe 2 to 5, 10 applications at a time, the skills, that does not translate into success when you look at the scale required to be successful to truly transform an entire company. So what we see now is the larger companies looking at over the shoulders of these born in the cloud providers and saying, who do I work with? I need large scale, I need power, I need resume. And so when we look at DXC, we have over 900 managed customers. Our numbers and our resume and our footprint speaks for itself. But do you also have a partner that has the power and the means to invest at will, the right place at the right time, get those people in the skill sets to where they are productive, they are adding value? Share a quick story about wrong place, wrong time people. So Thanksgiving last week, I have a whole family over, and my 8-year-old niece comes up to me, and so to my whole family, I do computers. Nobody understands what I do, so it's all just computers. And she says, Uncle Todd, did you hear about the computer guys that got drunk at work and got hurt? I'm like, well, no, I've not heard. I'm trying to reconcile AWS. I'm like, that can't happen. I'm like, how did they get drunk at work? They took too many screenshots. I'm like, oh, you got me. I'm like, well, wait a minute. How did they get hurt? Then they touched the firewall. And I'm like, oh, that's great. Thought I'd share that with you. She got me. She sucked me in. So with so much changing, let me share with you something that hasn't changed. And that's how our clients, our customers, and how large companies feel about cloud. In my role, I get to talk to a lot of large companies, senior execs, and I can't remember the last time that I had a conversation where I had to convince someone to be faster, to be agile, to be more efficient. We are full speed ahead. And if you're not full speed ahead, just know your competition probably is. But there is time, there's no need to panic. I'm not seeing mass migrations. We're not boxing everything up and moving that to cloud. It is still following that same small innovation sprint, that digital motion, that POC, where we're proving things out. The difference now is that large-scale providers like DXC are now in the small sprint digital conversations, and we can now apply all of that in an absolute amazing rate of success and accelerate our customers. But going digital is hard. Going digital is very hard. When you look at the skills gap, every single person in this room feels the skills gap. It is very hard to find those right people for the right place, the right time, with the right skills. It's also hard to get the finances right. Gartner did a recent survey, and 80% of CIOs today are over-deployed by 300%. An analyst group pegs that overspend at almost $15 billion a year. That's a lot of waste. And that's also a lot of opportunity for optimization. So when we look at the challenges and we look at how all of this can fit together, that's why we look at skills, we look at scale, we look at a large-scale digital partner. And so what I thought, keeping this end-in-mind theme, is really where our clients end up. When you look at their app estate, the things that they're going to focus on, what they're going to move over, we see about 10% being automated, virtualized, more efficient, but we still have that private cloud. We still have the on-prem, the ITO. We still have the heavy, heavy legacy apps that unfortunately slow innovation down because they're still connected. So it really stops that progress of cloud-native architecture adoption. I kind of look at this. I'm from Michigan, and I went to Michigan, unfortunately, but we've successfully transitioned to a basketball school, so that's good news for me. But if you've been in the Midwest, there's basements. This is how I describe private cloud and on-prem. In my house, when I was a kid, there was these old wooden steps. So I had a light switch, wooden steps if you were going to the basement, but then there was this dark void between the end of the step and the little string for the light bulb, if you guys know what I'm talking about. And that's, to me, is private cloud. That's on-prem. We've done the easy 20, 30%, but we got to get through that whole dark void of trying to open this up, turn the light on, and change things dramatically for our clients. That requires an enormous amount of commitment. And we're seeing a huge surge in public cloud, in AWS. It's a lot of trust going on. There's a lot of scale. There's a lot of movement. 60% of the apps we see end up in public cloud. And on the bottom, that 30%, it's why this number is important. So we see so many executives, when they look at their app estate and they look at their environment, they get really nervous. Like, how in the world am I going to move hundreds or thousands of workloads? They almost get overwhelmed when they look at scale and scope. 30% that we see never make it. Like, never make it at all. Not just to cloud, but never make it at all. Like, if that app thing was about like family, that 30% would be the ones that went to school, dropped out, lived at home, and they're never leaving the house. That's the 30% down there. So when we look at apps, when we look at strategy, we have to fit this in to a blueprint. There is no way you can look at your company and embrace a digital transformation strategy and not build a repeatable process that works. It's impossible. So for us at DXC, we've come up with a digital foundation blueprint. And this is about the most advisory slide that I have, but it starts with a business case. And we talked about removing technology. This is working above the app stack, right? No technology, no platforms, no acronyms. What is our customer trying to accomplish? What are you looking at? What's your digital challenge in the next 6 months? Let's look at process. Let's look at customer. Let's look at employee, user experience. Let's look at what kind of pressures you're under. That's the business case. We look at that and we want to prove that out. We want to create financial metrics, technical metrics, yes, and goals, but not a technical solution here. And second is what recommendations can we make for apps? Like what apps are connected to that business case? What's going to hold us back? What's going to accelerate? How do we build success with those applications tied to that business case? And next is the treatment of the applications. What kind of transformation are those applications going to go through? Is it a rehost? Is it a replatform? Is it a re-architecture? How does now the technology work through with the applications and all of that fit together? And the second part is more of the run piece of it. But we want to consider these pieces before we get started. We want to consider security. We want to consider the operations model. We want to look at all of those pieces to make sure that these applications can run, that we're not just creating another science project for someone to handle and someone to fund. We want to be able to deploy. We want to be at scale. We want to accelerate. But you have to build in that operational model and all of those considerations. And lastly is the high-level execution plan. Does us no good to do all of that and then not be able to execute. And execution looks like not just delivery, but ongoing support. How do we look at this application and the life cycle and how that's going to impact the business, how it's going to create result and serve that business case that we want, but then also down the road, what does this execution plan look like in terms of support? I mean, when we look at AWS and the services and things that are, I mean, it's mind-numbing how fast we move. And I think we're at about 75 new services announced this week. So does your execution plan look at new technologies, new products and services? And if you can include that in the stack, how do you support it? So when we look at transformation and we go from applications and methodology, really we boil it to, for us, as three main efforts, is to optimize. And that optimization is both tracks, is applications and environment. And for us, is the getting started piece of it is to clean it up. And it's not just to reduce your bill. When we look at optimization, most people just throw that in the category of, all right, I want to reduce my spend. Yeah, I just want to reduce my monthly bill. But optimization is looking at the app stack, looking at your services, service calls, servers. What do you have connected to that application? And can we clean that up? Can we clean that up in a very simple motion? Simple optimization, but getting you to an improved state to start. And I would tell you, I think we miss, as an industry, the value of optimizing before you go. I think we get in this really quick motion, right? We want to throw the apps to cloud. But there is some effort to just pump the brakes a little bit, and let's look at the application. Let's look at if maybe there's an optimization effort that we can apply to the app before it gets to cloud. So that's optimize. And second is modernize. Now we want to start moving. We want to start moving these legacy applications. And again, I think as an industry, we've done a good job attacking the low-hanging fruit. We've looked at the 20, 30%. We've got that thing moving. That's in the cloud, right? Maybe just a rehost, but it doesn't matter. We've still got it out of the way. But we really need to really attack the legacy workloads. Because in my experience, this is where I think, again, we slow down the most. Because these legacy applications in Cobalt, AS400, mainframe, all of these servers, these core systems are connected to all the applications and the business cases that we write. And we've got to free those up. Otherwise, your new applications can't breathe. We can't scale. We can't take that next step if they're constantly bogged down by legacy applications. And so you have to look at the whole enterprise. And lastly is transform. When we look at new operation models, I rarely have conversations now about migration. It is all about automation. We have almost blown past that point and say, look, I need to have an automated environment. You have to take costs out of my supply chain, costs out of my delivery, and we do that through automation and automation tools. And for us, that really drives us to our DNA as DXC, and we call that launch, adopt, run. So first is launch, and this is really just getting you going. And just last year alone, we launched 800 unique engagements for 230 clients. We did a lot of workshops. I can tell you that's a lot of whiteboarding to do 800 unique engagements. But that's workshops, that's rapid assessments, and it's 100 different projects. And this is just in the last year. And that resulted in migrating over 60,000 workloads. And this is just, again, in the launch phase. And second is adopt. If you really look at what your personal, your corporate roadmap is for adopting native technologies, native architectures, give yourself an honest assessment. Where are you at? For us, it is about people and process. It is about changing the way you develop applications, DevSecOps, CI/CD pipelines. We have to completely change internally how we develop apps, how we think about applications. And you think about how we used to write apps, and the business group has a requirement, tosses it over to development. 6 months later, you get something that's completely wrong. Right? We are now in an agile, I need it yesterday kind of environment for applications. And we are, again, chasing a business case that most definitely has some kind of time constraint or time frame on a go-to-market. The last thing we want to do is get bogged down in development because we don't have the right people or the right culture, and then by the time we get to market, that application is obsolete. So when we look at cloud-native applications, we look at digital squads, and hopefully most of you started to embrace the concept of digital squads. So security architects, cloud principals, getting a squad together where they are solely focused on a single outcome, as fast and agile as possible. And we recently acquired a company called Luxoft, where we acquired an enormous amount of IP in this space. Super excited about it. And we have, by the way, a ton of demos at our booth. So if you have time, please stop by. Please talk with us. And we have an event tonight at Yardbird, right across from the convention center exit. And we're all of our product experts will all be there. So going through some of the cool things we're doing in cloud native, please stop by and see us. So last thing is run. And this is once we get you to the cloud, right? What kind of managed services, operational excellence, support can we provide you? That's over 4,000 customers we do today for cloud and platform services. And we process over 400 million serverless APIs. So when we take this story full circle, and we say, all right, we need skills, we need scale, we need people, we need process, you can see why we are so excited, why I'm so excited to be part of the DXC team. We have got a fantastic story. And really it boils down for us. So you take all our methodologies, all the applications, our perspective on the market, is really 4 factors for success in digital. One is industry context. When we're building an application, we're building a strategy, we've got to look at the industry itself, regulatory compliance, security. Is legislation? What's impacting your industry? And it's not just your competition, but it's everything in between. And second is the impact of trends. So from a technology standpoint, is there a new sensor API that could create a new ingest layer? Now we have more data than we ever thought. So from an analytics and intelligence standpoint, opens up a whole another world of data points. But it's also not technology. So things like raw materials. Is there a spike maybe in your supply chain? Is there something which is my favorite area, of user experience design, UXD, customer sentiment? Are there trends within your customer base or your employees or your user base that are changing that you've got to incorporate in your digital plan? Absolutely important. And then third, digital culture and skills. Culture and skills. Very, very hard to solve the skills gap. But we are actively, as DXC, investing, and I'll give you just a light overview, too, of our practice, but we're investing in the workforce 5 years from now. Not now, but 5 years from now. And I would encourage you all to look at your workforce. What does it look like 5 years from now? What are you doing now from a training and an investment standpoint to build out those skills? It is impossible to go out and brute force hire. You have got to develop. You have to have a farm system. And you have to be building these skills very specific to AWS platforms, very specific to products and services in order to be successful. And lastly, it's about partners. If you hear anyone, like on this stage, talk about cloud, and they are everything to everyone, and they don't need partners, they're a one-stop shop, which I've heard this sales pitch before, 2 things are probably true. 1, they're brand new to cloud, and they have not done anything. Or 2, they're in sales and they're trying to make their number for the end of the quarter. That's pretty much it. You need partnerships. You have to reach out. You need scale and you need expertise. And it is impossible for a single company to own that. And for us, our most strategic partner is AWS. And AWS is not a relationship that's new to DXC. Again, the practice was only launched a year ago. But we are already rolling with 7,000 accreditations for AWS. Only AWS actually has more. We have 1,500 certifications globally. And we have plans and a roadmap to double that in the next year. So from a skills and a scale perspective, we're building a pretty solid resume. So let me dive in just a little bit to the integrated practice and our relationship with AWS. And the marketing and the sales part of it for us is a true go-to-market motion. My teams are on calls with AWS every single week, talking about opportunities, talking about sales, talking about challenges globally. And the reason that's important is that when you change culture, when you change your sales approach, you want to model a best practice. And if you look at AWS, and if you're a customer of AWS, you have actually experienced this. They are world-class in their ability to bracket a sales cycle. And what I mean by that is when you start the sales motion, you are dealing with world-class solution architecture talent. World-class solutions, creative, great ideation process, and great proof of concept, and a willingness to invest. You've seen that in the pre-sales motion. You've also seen it in the post-sales motion, where it's a seamless transition from architecture and solutioning to delivery execution. And so if you could just pick one model that we're chasing as DXC, it would be that. And so our whole go-to-market, our sales motion, our engagement is to replicate that best practice through AWS. And second, I talked about last year the agreement that we signed. This is a big financial agreement between DXC and AWS. We have got some major commitments. And so it wasn't a situation where we signed an agreement and said, well, if we sell AWS, that'll be great. If we don't sell AWS, there's a bill, a big bill, at the end of the year. So if you were wondering about the commitment, we actually have made a financial commitment to AWS to get this done. So this will be an absolute core component and a digital pillar of DXC. And lastly is the joint practice. So the AWS integrated practice that I own, my team, we are absolutely focused on AWS. That's what success looks like. But when we look at culture, how we're training, how we're investing in our solution architects, how we're training our salespeople, we're looking at delivery, we look at delivery execution and the offering. All of that, again, is modeled after AWS, and it's in concert and in partnership with AWS. They are active participants in our architecture meetings and our roadmaps to make sure that we are tightly aligned in what we're doing from a portfolio standpoint and a go-to-market. So all of these things really fit together when we look at the customer, when we look at how things fit together for the customer. Can we execute? Can we have that business plan discussion? Can we do the requirements? And then can we move all of that? And what does that success look like? So when we look at Claro, one of our customers for over 15 years, we're going to dive into a great success story of how all of this comes together. So Rodrigo Duclos, Chief Digital Officer for Claro, is going to take you through the story. And then once he wraps up, we'll do some Q&A.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
So I'm here to tell you the story of the partnership and the projects we did with DXC. As a classical client, I spend very little time reviewing the slides, so I'm going to correct some of the numbers and tell you more. The first one is Claro is a company that is supposed, it was originated by the merge, the current company is a merge of three companies, a cable company, a long distance company, and the mobile company. So it wasn't started in 2003. It was much before that. The 2003 date is the mobile company. So we have everything in Brazil. We have the satellite, the cable, fiber, broadband, TV, mobile. We have over 40 million subscribers. Net revenues around $12 billion. What else? Yeah, leaders in pay TV, and it's part of a Mexican group it's the Slim Carso group that owns Telmex, Telcel, and all the Claros in Latin America. So we do a lot of things. Those here is just to tell you that we keep innovating. Not going over everything there, but we've been positioning ourselves in the last years as the next new things in telecom, and it's been pretty successful. We've been acquiring a lot of market share, and we are fighting the OTT wars like any other TV operator. And we are looking at digitalizing the business and creating new business models with open innovation and collaboration with startups. So in this context, improving customer buying experience for the cable business, we started that. That's where we started with the two-pizza team approach and the agile. Early on in the game, like 7 years ago, we started that. Hidden from IT, hidden from the business, we started playing with the websites and the e-commerce machines. So we developed inside the company, the rebels there, we developed a system that we could show the incumbent and the big company that we could do it digitally, and there was money on the table, money to be captured. I'm pretty sure we're benchmarks in Latin America, at least for e-commerce, but for some operators I've been talking to, our performance on the digital side is pretty good. And our approach was first, let's do MVP, so let's sell it and start understanding how to sell digitally in the internet. And then we do like Amazon, get the request and the sales request, and then we process it like normally we would do after the call center call, right? This, of course, has some cost involved, the back offices. Still way lower than the traditional way to sell, so that's how we propel the model inside the company. But still, we on the cable business, this became very big. We reached almost 20% of the sales through the digital, not considering digital media, right? So sometimes people tell me, oh no, we're doing 50%. If we're not talking about digital media converting to sales, that's fully digital sales. So it's a very impressive number. But as we scale up, we were having difficulties with the creations and the management of the back offices and the call center seats there. So inconsistencies, the time for processing the wholesale, of course, that creates, if you have a lot of humans in the process, you have fraud opportunities. So what we were, and DXC was running the legacy systems, the BSS system for many years. And with the digital transformation of DXC, they came up and said, oh, let's help you to, we think we can help you in automatizing the sales calls, because we developed a lot of tools for running those BSSs. Maybe we can expose them over APIs, and you can use the APIs directly from the website without going through the back offices. And basically, with what we did, we said, well, let's see if it works. So I put the e-commerce team joined together with their team, and we started developing the APIs and see what we could do with the legacy and the legacy support systems that they developed over the years. And we came up with the ability to start automatizing some of those calls. Very little at first, but the POC showed it was possible to do it. And after we did it, we started discussing the business model and how we're going to pay. So basically, two companies we put, I already had a team developing the funnel, the commerce experience, and this team just basically budget some time to work on the automatization. And DXC came up with the ideas of how to integrate that on the legacy one. So this is kind of describes the process. I would only point that the first part there is where we stayed for 2 or 3 years, just making the case for the company to invest on the 2 pizza teams developing the e-commerce. And once you get the request, then you process through the call centers. So we created a problem first, and then DXC came with an opportunity to make it even better, right? So it was easy to prove it and to come up with a business model where we could share the benefits, so there was no investment at first. All of that, we did it hacking the system, hacking the organization, so there was no business plan, there was no investment, improvement, and the IT, the CIO was kind of mad at us when he discovered that, but we made it work, and yeah, I think I pulled all that story of the relationship here, but basically we achieved pretty good results on creating this. Oh, there's some slides missing, right? Whoa. Here.
Get back to it.
This one, yeah. So we put DXC as an API management team. That is in AWS. So I had other teams, other product teams working on AWS before. The whole customer experience and the e-commerce side was already on AWS, so it was easy to integrate and to monitor. So we benefit also from the operational skills that DXC had on the AWS, so we could extend the monitoring and the security practices they brought to the table, improving the experience and our knowledge on using AWS. Results. So currently, all the request calls how do you call that? The sales request that comes from the website goes through that process. Some of them have encountered some still, it's very variable, so still there's a lot of things that has to go through a human because of the variations of the cases and the products and also permissions to write on databases that are still considered sensitive. But we already have over less than a year, I guess, 35% of the sales with no human interaction for a cable, right? Which means getting the installation order and send everything. And of course, we are taking people out of the loop, so fraud risks and a better surveillance of the process. So we're pretty happy with the outcome, and I'd like just to emphasize that we did it not as a traditional IT project, right? There was no RFP or requisition. It was basically leveraging the partnership Todd was mentioning and the knowledge from both sides on AWS, and we leveraged that. And we came up with results. I guess that's what we had to present.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your time. So we'll just open up to Q&A. I think we got a mic there for any questions. Duclos and I will be also available after the presentation. So any questions? No? Okay. So, well, thank you so much. You guys have a great rest of the reInvent. And thank you for joining us. Thank you.